Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Scala Days 2017 Chicago. My name is Michael, and I'm one of the developers of Scala plugin in IntelliJ. I work for JetBrains, and I've been supporting several subsystems of Scala plugin for almost 3 years. Mostly I'm focused on scala.meta support. By the way, we have a talk in the neighboring session, which is exactly about scala.meta. But thanks anyway for choosing my talk instead of everyone else. That's very flattering. So today's talk is going to be about the productive usage of IntelliJ Idea, particularly with Scala. Just to begin with, please raise your hands. No, not immediately after I ask you. Please raise your hands, those people who are familiar with IntelliJ Idea. And by any chance, all of you are using IntelliJ Idea? Almost everyone. Well, that's good to hear. But still, even if you are familiar with it, I'm going to show some basic stuff as well, just to make everything clear. I think there's a problem with the screen. It shows me some unused imports. They're garbling the screen, so I can just start with removing them by optimizing the imports. Sorry for that. I should have prepared better for the presentation. Huh? Yeah, that is a setup, obviously. No. What is an IDE? It's a tool that allows a person to code more efficiently and quickly. It does it by providing several features, several groups, big groups of features that ease the process of writing your code. Since a good programmer is a lazy programmer, then any good programmer must target his approach to writing code as to write less code as less code as is possible. And IDEs use several features to help you do that. Let's just start with some very, very basic things. What is the most basic thing you can do in an IDE? With several keystrokes, exactly 2 keystrokes, you can search for stuff. When I press double shift, it opens up a pop-up window that allows you to use the generic search everywhere. It does not really matter if you're searching for a class, for a file, or for a symbol. This is like the place where to go when you don't know what you want, basically. For example, I want to search for something that involves implicits in our code base. For those who do not know, I've currently opened our own Scala plugin project, and I'm going to show you these features inside our own project. So if I, for example, wanted to look for the implicit conversions or the code that supports implicit conversions and implicit lookup, I will just type the implicit, and voila. All the classes that supposedly support implicit manipulation are shown here. So, but this only works for, the only goal of this is when you do not know what you want, but because sometimes you want something in particular, like search for a class or search for a method, it is easy to invoke those search terms just by different key combinations. For example, if I want to search for a particular class, I press several keystrokes, which are shown on the bottom of the screen. Particularly for searching classes, we have Control-Shift-N for Windows, and I can basically do the same thing by using search by implicit. There you go. Oh, I actually pressed Control-Shift, sorry. implicit. Yeah, and it's basically filtering out the usages by the class. Okay, one more important thing. I already told you about, in case that you do not know what you're looking for, you might as well do not know what feature are you looking for. This is also a very useful feature to look for features. And we also have a shortcut for that. You just press the Control-Shift-A to search for actions. Actions are basically, you can call them features of an IDE. So if you want to look for classes, you can go class, go to by name actions, and it basically shows you the same thing that I've shown you before. All right, so this is some very basic stuff that allows you to navigate quickly between files. You can also do that with a Control-E shortcut, which pops up a pretty neat tab list of recent files. This is also very basic things, but it allows you to quickly navigate with the files that you've recently switched to and forth. Okay, what else will you need? As you can see, I'm not showing you any tabs or project view. So this is the presentation mode, and you got nothing but the editor, plain editor, with line numbers perhaps. So to quickly navigate between recently edited files, you can, you can press, instead of Control-E, which pops up the recent files, you can press Control-Shift-E to switch to recently edited files. This is also useful when you are working with some code base and you're editing multiple files and do not wish to be distracted by those tabs and other clunky interface parts. Well, basically, you could have noted that all the shortcuts they have shown you basically involve a keystroke and an extended mode, which involves a shift and the same keystroke. Just like, for example, searching for a class is Control-N, searching for a file is quite similar, it's Control-Shift-N. There it is. So if you're willing to explore some features, you can just add some keystrokes or a shift. But anyway, so this part shows you like the navigation, pretty simple. But this is not the only feature you expect from IDE. Well, since IDEs must not only help you to navigate code, it's very important purpose of it is to help you to code, to write code. And usually this is called completion, but you probably know that. And IntelliJ Idea supports several kinds of completion, which really ease up writing the code. For example, if I wish to introduce some variable or a field, it can even suggest the name for you. For example, I need an element, and I just type the element, the first few letters, and it shows you the options for the name. It does this by analyzing your code base and also introducing some hard-coded predefined names, which you can reuse in your code. But the main fact is that you can just type a few letters, and it will suggest you several options to use. Okay, this is for the name suggestion for variables. Also, there's a very neat feature if you're defining a method. For example, it will also suggest you the names for the parameters. It is very context dependent. So, for example, in our code base, we have syntax trees. And syntax trees have element in the names. So if I'm going to use the element as an argument to the function, the thing I'll do, I'll just press control space, which invokes the completion. But as you can see, there's no useful classes in current scope because I have not imported one. This is solved by invoking completion the second time. This is like a very useful feature, and it allows IntelliJ to scan your code base and suggest you several classes to use. For example, if I want to use our C elements, I can just invoke the completion the second time, and voila, it shows me the correct type element for the argument. Okay, so what else for the name suggestion? Several times I have to use like ahead of type completion for the new expressions. Like for example, if I define a field which contains some of our classes, let it be the PSI element, and I want to initialize it with some value, and I can just type the new keyword and invoke the completion. After that, it will suggest you several classes that extend your type that you have defined earlier. This is also very useful, so, as it allows you to, like, for example, the psyche element. If I invoke this is very big one, but in case your project has slightly more compact definitions, you might use this as well. Okay. Other important thing that you expect from an IDE is code completion. You probably already know what that is, but IntelliJ is quite, famous for providing the smart completions, which I've already showed you. But this is not the only thing you can get. There are several less known features which have been introduced pretty recently, like a year ago or 1.5, that allow you to do very interesting things. For example, let me make a field that is our Psi element. And we have several extension methods that are provided using implicit conversions. But I do not have them in scope, once again. But I still want to invoke some of those methods. I think you already know what I'm going to do. For example, we have an extension method called module, which exports the module in which this element tree is contained. As you can see, it does not resolve, it's red. But just look, if I invoke completion first time, nothing happens. But if I do this the second time, it will also scan your project and look for the implicit conversions that are applicable in these circumstances. As you can see, we have found this particular extension method, and we can just autocomplete it, and it will insert the necessary imports automatically. See, this is also very useful if you are not sure which class you want to import. You just invoke the smart completion second time. Okay, this is for the completion. It's fairly straightforward, but the most important part is that you should remember is the second time completion, which invokes some functionality that is more performance heavy. So it might take a while, but it performs some deep analysis of your code and might suggest you some very useful features that you might not have thought through, or things that you want to keep in your head, but there's just too many of them. Okay, So the completion is pretty basic feature of an IDE if you look from the user's perspective. Another important thing that an IDE should do is to analyze your code and help you find the mistakes or help you to improve your code. This is basically the thing that you expect from a compiler or an IDE, like to supply as a default solution. But in case of IntelliJ Idea, we have a thing called inspections, which you probably already know about. Those inspections are, we have plenty of inspections, for example, for collections. This really helps if you're new to Scala and you're not really sure how to use the standard library or several features. It also helps you to find those small mistakes which pop up sometimes. Like in this case, I'm making a very stupid mistake of misusing the standard library. This is obviously not the thing you should do. This is easily replaceable by exists method, and IntelliJ detects the incorrect usages and suggests you to fix it automatically. So in order to invoke the quick fixes, you just press Alt-Enter or Alt-Return for Macs, which is basically the same thing, and just replace this. So it's really easy. There are several other options that you might use. These examples include this, which is basically not something that you should use, but sometimes I find those stupid mistakes even in our code base. This is replaceable by head, obviously. This does not just cover the sequence and the containers. It also applies to things like options. For example, if the result of this expression is an option, as you can see. Oh no, find, sorry. If I look for something in a sequence, I should get an option of something that lies in it. By the way, if you have seen what I've done, I've invoked a type hint or a type info. That is also a very useful feature that allows you to quickly type check parts of your expressions or your code, not just to find errors, but to have an idea of what's going on in your code. So it's an option, but if for some reason I want to extract the value in Java style, and I'll write get whilst null, it'll also complain and tell you that this is really fixable with a different method or null. Also pretty straightforward. This also works for maps. So in case, several times I've seen people extracting values from map by using this weird construct map $1. That's very stupid, don't do that. There's a value, a keys method that is widely used, apparently. Okay, so those were pretty straightforward things that allow you to move part of your job to the IDE. As I've already mentioned, this is also very useful for the newcomers who have very slight clue of how to use the language, how to use standard library. So it's suggested that they enable all those inspections to make the code cleaner and learn from their mistakes in compile time, even before the compile time. Okay. By the way, if you have any questions, you can just ask right away. So, other big thing, we've already covered completion, we've covered inspections, and other big thing that people usually confuse are intentions. Intentions are like small refactorings that can be done in place. While inspection is a thing that hints you that something is wrong with your code. You might not always want to write a code that is unveiled, but sometimes you just want to refactor something in place. For example, if I write a for loop from 1 to something, and now I remember that I need to do some guards and other stuff. I can quickly convert it then to the for comprehension in brackets. Oh, does it work? Okay, for some reason it doesn't. This is also pretty simple. All the smart things that you want to invoke are mostly invoked by pressing Alt-Enter. Basically, if you want to use some editing or inspections or intentions or whatever else, you call the context menu with Alt-Enter. This is pretty straightforward approach, and will cover like 90% of your needs probably. So, all right, but in case this does not satisfy you, we can also do some more stuff. That also covers the desugaring the for expressions. If you probably know, the for expressions in Scala are later compiled into something else, into some more verbose usage of Scala library functions. We can also do that by invoking the same intentions and desugaring the for comprehensions. So if you want to know what your for loop really looks like, you just invoke the same thing with the key binding that I've told you and shown you. Also pretty straightforward and easy to use. All right. So what are the things I might want to refactor in place? Yeah, you probably know about like renaming, but that's very simple. Let's do something more advanced. For example, I have a function which takes some arguments. And I have those arguments named somehow. I can quickly then, after using this function, provide it with named arguments. So in order to clarify the things that I've wrote, I can just invoke the same Alt-Enter to quickly fix the way of calling this function by using the same method. All right, this is also pretty straightforward, but I dislike the num number would be better. Yep. So basically, those inspections are, those intentions, as I've mentioned, are small refactorings that can be done in place. Mostly, this helps when, you're developing some large code base and you find that your code does not suit some of your standards, or you just want to explore the code some more. This is pretty useful for you in this case. All right, so what other useful features does IntelliJ provide you while you code in Scala? Probably one of the features that people discover not so easily and are really surprised sometimes are automatic generation of stuff. Like, for example, you are pretty, I think you know that IntelliJ Idea allows you to generate companion objects and like override methods. by invoking the same alt-enter. And like in this case, I have a trait, Scala Days Chicago. And by invoking this smart action, I can just create a companion object of this trait without any hassle of writing them manually. See, this is also very useful. Also, this is not the only thing that can auto-generate. For example, if you have a sealed trait, which in this case I do, if you're wondering, what I just did is typing a few letters and then pressing enter, and a large bar of code appeared. Some of you might be familiar with live templates. Live templates are a very useful feature in case you have some amount of code that you write very frequently, for some reason you don't want to extract it into some method, or it's generally impossible. You can create a live template which will allow you to make some shortcuts. Like in this case, I have defined a live template mktr, which is short for make trait, which expands into a group of sealed traits. Like in order to do that, you have to actually go to the settings and search for live templates here. It's pretty easy to add them. Oh, I'm sorry, this presentation mode does not allow you to see the whole window. So, also pretty straightforward. You just define a new template, define an abbreviation that we want to use, and define the context, contents and the context in which it's applicable. So, all right, we actually have several more predefined templates, like you probably know the main template, which generates method main, and some of the others. Okay, so what can I do? What interesting things can I do with the sealed traits? As you probably know, sealed traits allow for safer pattern matching because they guarantee that all the inheritors of the given class are defined in the same place. So IntelliJ can make use of it by generating the pattern matching cases for you. This is a very useful feature, and I'll demonstrate it right now. I'm gonna create a fake method and match for it. Match. And guess what key combination I'm gonna use? Yeah, the alt-enter. See, it quickly generated the necessary inheritors of our class, so you can spare yourself some time. Eventually, especially if you have some very huge hierarchy of those sealed traits. Yeah, that's really nice. I personally use it for I'm supporting Scala.meta, so we have a lot of case classes and sealed traits. This really helps a lot. One of the also, this is not all the features from the completion that I've shown you. One of the most important things that not many people know about is the postfix completion. This is very useful since you can modify your code later after you've already written it. For example, if I have something and I want to, if I have a string and I want to print it, I would have to surround it with the brackets. In case you didn't know, we have a surround with action, this one. It allows you to wrap the expression that you've selected with something. All right, this is the unoptimal way of doing a very simple thing, but instead of this, I can just invoke a completion, but it doesn't show me anything useful. Well, it actually does, but it's in the bottom, and if I look for it, we have certain options that look differently. So you see, they're not functions, they're not methods, nothing else, but they still show up in the completion list somewhere in the bottom, and you can just invoke them, and we will automatically wrap your expression with something. This works not just for println, but also for matching things. Oops, I've deleted it accidentally. Okay, apparently you can't match strings. I have to rewrite it yet again. Okay, so this is very useful if you want to generate something afterwards. Yeah?
How do you get those green tooltips that come up?
Oh, green tooltips, that's a presentation assistant plugin. Well, it's not very useful if you're not presenting, since like if you're just...
That's a plugin.
Yeah, that's a plugin. It's a very simple one. It just shows you this pop-up with key bindings. Okay, so like for example, we have a match postfix template, which allows you to quickly create pattern match on some expression. Very useful. Okay, you can look for the complete list of postfix completion in settings. As you probably remember, just use the search for postfix completion. See, it shows some Java as well. We have, not a very small one, pretty big list for postfix completions for Scala. But if you would like to see something else, you can just ask for it on our issue tracker or in Gitter. Okay. So that's it for the basic things. Another important but a little more advanced feature is inspection of implicits. If you write code that uses some implicits, you can very quickly analyze things by invoking several of our key bindings. For example, we have a class which C factory, which requires some implicit parameters. Okay, create element for text. It basically creates syntax trees from whatever you supply. Okay, in order to show the implicit parameters that are expected in a particular place, you press another keystroke, which is, oops, sorry, Control-Shift-P, and it will show you the implicit parameters that are expected in a certain place. Again, this is invoked by pressing Control-Shift-P on Windows or Shift-CMD-P on Macs. Also pretty straightforward, but now it doesn't work since I haven't provided it with any of the implicits right now, but I can. I'll just define a dummy method that does it. Project, which doesn't do anything. And, oops, I have to define it implicit. Okay, let's take a look. Whoa, applicable type by implicits were not found. Sorry. Does it work now? No. Okay. I guess we'll take a look at next time. Sorry. Same thing goes for implicit conversions. In case you're using the default Scala as Java as something else, which you can, as I've already showed you, look up by simply invoking double completion, even if you do not have those implicits in scope. It will automatically attach them to your code via imports. And here you can see what implicit conversions have been applied to a particular expression and quickly navigate to it. Like for example here, implicit final class any to string add. Yeah, this is also very useful if you're writing a code with many implicits or implicit conversions, implicit parameters or so. Okay, this is like the end of the most basic things that one would use in Scala plugin for IntelliJ. But in case you know something about Scala.meta, this is a framework that is going to replace the old style Scala Reflect macros and intended to use some metaprogramming purposes. We now support Scala.meta. The support has been up for like a year or so, but in case you missed, Scala.meta supports annotations that can transform things that they annotate. For example, it can add methods, it can add companion objects, it can like rewrite your methods or so. Like the pretty straightforward examples would be to add a main method to an object. Like the annotations to do that are pretty straightforward. They define it in your project as well, but we're not going to focus on the implementation. The thing you need to know is that this main annotation adds a main method, and in order to see the result of the expansion, you can just click the appeared icon and it will expand the code by actually running the annotation that you've supplied. Another useful feature is ability to report errors from the annotation. As you can see, it supplies you, this annotation just determines if the thing is a trait or not, and if it's not a trait, it will like supply you with an exception. But if I change it to a trait, the warning will go away. You see, pretty useful. Also, the extension methods will resolve now. So this particular annotation adds a companion object, and previously, as you can see, the companion method did not resolve. That is defined in a companion object. But if I enable the annotation, it magically appears. Okay, so that's also a pretty useful feature if you are using Scala.meta and have not caught up with the latest changes. All right, so that's basically it, the most basic things that one might expect from an IDE. And while they look basic from the outside, they are actually pretty useful. So I think we have like 5 minutes to go. It's time for questions.
Is there any reference?
Hmm?
Is there any reference material or any documentation which listed all the things you said?
Yeah, I've shown you several things that have not been yet documented. Mainly, like the things that have been changed within half year or so, including Scala.meta support, postfix completion for some advanced things. Yeah, but you can always explore it manually. Yeah.
What are you guys working on now?
Currently, we are focused on supporting several new subsystems. First one is SBT. We have like modified this in a very heavy manner. So now we support SBT console, which is basically integrated now into the IntelliJ Idea. So you can run your builds, run your tests from the console itself. and it will report the fancy results of testing right into the IDE. Another big thing is support for akka. Andrew is having a talk tomorrow. He will showcase all the intermediate support for it. It's going to be a part of Ultimate project, so we provide commercial edition of Scala plugin. Another thing is scala.meta, which I've already mentioned. We are constantly working to improve the support alongside with the scala.meta team itself. Okay, then probably that's it. Thank you, everyone.